This is the hot new headphone from Berlin that's got the people talking. It is the headphone from Head Audio with its fancy AMT drivers, a first in the headphone world. Here's the ever popular HiFiMan Aria. Here's the legendary Sennheiser HD800S. This costs $1,900, $1,600, $1,700. So which one's better? Let's find out. So here we have AMT or Air Motion Transformer drivers here. These are planar drivers and these are dynamic drivers. So just a bit of history, Head has been making tower speakers and studio monitors since 2015. They generally use AMT drivers as their tweeters. For this, they basically took their tweeter out, tuned it for headphone use, did tons of trial and error, and made it into a headphone driver. The results are pretty stunning. So for sound, let's compare it to the Aria first. In general, I'd say the headphone is a level above the Aria in certain facets, but not up to par in others. One of the biggest gripes about the Aria, in my opinion, were the mids feeling a bit distant or not as full as other headphones, causing an almost hollow sound. The good news here is that the headphones solve this issue. It brings the mids back to the front, exhibiting an overall fuller sound signature. They still don't have the level of vocal richness and warmth of something that the ZMF Aeolus or the HD650s can provide, but for a non-dynamic headphone, they are, in my opinion, cream of the crop for reproducing mids in this price range. It is really nice. Now the Arias are more lively with seemingly more dynamics and a much wider soundstage. The huge soundstage in general is an amazing strength of the Arias. And while the soundstage of the headphones isn't as big, the overall sound is much more real and much more intimate. The treble definition of the heads, it is really a notch above. The top end frequencies produce a sound that's very real and natural with very little fatigue. It really is a pleasure to listen to synth heavy music or pretty much anything that has a sparkly top end for frequency range. But I'm just gonna use the song again, Fireflies by Owl City. It is a really fun song, and the Aria can provide that high frequency sparkle that you come to love. It produces it really well, but compared to the heads, it sounds a bit overdone and fatiguing, and almost a little fake at the same time. Add to the fact that you have to turn up the volume to hear the mids at a level that you can actually enjoy, and it's a recipe for a headache for the HiFiMan Arias here. The headphones really do this song justice, and I really appreciate that. Artist Yoshi Horikawa, hopefully I said that right, he creates some pretty ingenious music using sounds you hear every day, like a ping pong ball bouncing or marbles rolling. There's this song called The Letter, and he has a pencil and it is just scribbling on paper, but that's the basis of the song. It's high pitched and it's really fun to listen to. And it sounds fun on both, but the heads create a much more intimate experience here for this track. The treble is simply more realistic on the headphones, and the pencil sounds more like a pencil. I feel the Aria here is just showing off its dynamic range while taking a hit on timbre. One of my favorite violin songs, 24 Caprices by Augustin Hadalik, I'll put a link to it in the description. It sounds stellar on both again, and on the first listen, I did think like the Aria did do the treble better, but the more I heard this song and I compared, I noticed that although the Aria had more dynamic range and hit the very high notes, the headphones actually gave them more precision and more texture. I kept going back and forth on this here, and it was honestly hard to test. They do sound different. In the end, I simply prefer the treble response of the headphones for most songs. In this case, I like to think of the Aria as Samsung phones, or when you go to Best Buy and you see the really bright, saturated TVs with their pretty kiosks. Samsung likes to crank up the brightness and the colors so you notice their beautiful OLED technology. They hope it'll dazzle consumers into buying them over the competition. The Aria is like this in a sense, or at least it reminds me of it. The treble gets really high and sparkly, and it is a technical achievement when you think about what they're able to do. It is amazing, but when you buy it and when you finally take it home, you kind of tune it down and you want to hear something that's more natural, less fatiguing, much more enjoyable for longer listening sessions. And comparatively, the head here is like Apple. It may not have the most saturated colors, but it tries to stay truer to the source. And before this starts a flame war, I'm actually an Android guy, so don't even start. Okay, now onto the bass. Let's throw on some beta blocker and crank up the 120 Hz shelf up about 3 decibels. But I have to give the edge here on slam, dynamics, and even speed to the Aria. Its enormous drivers really help to provide that bigger presence, and it just gives more oomph that a song may call for. Also, when I really cranked up the bass to about 6 decibels of boost for another low frequency test song, there was an audible vibration coming from the left cup of the headphones. It's like 2 parts of the headphones internally were hitting each other when they shouldn't. I further tested this with a 40 Hz test tone, and yup, it's very apparent. Hoping this is an issue just with my unit, but even so, 95% of what I listen to doesn't get this low and this loud anyway. So for jazz, the Aria can sound almost shouty when you're comparing directly to the headphone. The song Gotta Be Patient, it's a fun little song with Michael Bublé and some other people, but it's a prime example of how things sound more natural on the headphone while sounding more lively on the Aria. The S's are so perfect on the headphone, while they can sound a bit sibilant on the Aria. But again, only when you're directly comparing them to each other. You notice this. Song Black and White by Paco Versailles. It's a really nice pop track. The more intimate soundstage of the headphone makes you feel like you're with the band in a small venue standing first row while the song is being performed. With the Aria, it makes the track sound like a typical recording. It's kind of hard to describe. It still sounds great with tons of the dynamics and slam, but the head here, it just feels like it has this level of transparency that the Aria couldn't match. For acoustic music, I was surprised, but I actually preferred the Aria over the headphone. City Love by John Mayer and the acoustic version of Take On Me by a-ha. It sounded much better with the bigger soundstage, plus the slightly more sparkly top end here. Hip hop on the headphones sounds spectacular. Lotus Flower Bomb by Wale. Miguel's in that as well. You feel like you're in the music versus being, again, almost shouted at by the Aria. Excellent mid-bass response on the headphones here. There's no fatiguing highs and has really engaging vocals all the way through. Legendary song Shook Ones by Mobb Deep. It's a great track that's now 25 years old. 25 years! This is a prime example of how the headphones will give you the crispest, clearest mids from the strumming bass in the background, which is actually a piano slowed down in the studio. Bit of trivia for you. While the Aria excels in impact and bass. I think most people would prefer it on the Aria for this song, but I think the more seasoned audiophile may prefer it on the headphone for just the general clarity and overall true to life presentation here. One More Chance by Biggie. It sounds really smooth on the headphones, but I do have to note that there are these consistent sparkly sounds throughout the song. It's probably like wind chimes mixed with sleigh bells even, but they are more prominent and even more satisfying on the Arias here. Then the chorus of the song comes in with the harmonizing female vocals, and it is again more engaging on the Arias as well. It may not sound as natural as it does on the head, but I'd take this song on the Aria all day. Just another case where you're going back and forth about which one of these is better. And I need to say, listening to either on their own merits will make you happy. It's only when you start A-B comparing directly that you start to notice all these little things. For example, I always thought the timbre and tonality was spot on with the Aria until I had the chance to demo the heads in my own quiet apartment. The headphone just brings those qualities to the next level. All right, let's switch this out with an HD 800S. And I'll keep this short and sweet. The Sennheisers are amazing at reproducing the sound of a violin to my ears. And I absolutely love its soundstage and excellent instrument separation for jazz. So how does it stack up to the head? So the two genres I absolutely love here, one of them is classical, and I still very much prefer this on the HD 800S. The heads have superior timbre. A cymbal actually sounds more like a cymbal compared to the overtop and sibilant Sennheisers. And the same goes with violins. They do to my ears sound more natural on the headphones. But fake sounding or not, I personally prefer how they sound on the HD800S. It's just a sweet, brain-tickling sound with an immaculate soundstage. It's hard to deny that it's just attention-grabbing. And it's one of the reasons why I just turn to these headphones most times when it's time to listen to classical music. For jazz, the headphones remind me of the Aeolas here when you're comparing to the HD800S. They are so intimate that you get lost in the music, which I really appreciate. But you really do miss out on the details that the HD800s here are known to provide. The big knock against the Sennheisers here is the complete lack of impact. Suspicious Bulge by Riot Jazz Brass Band. It's a great song I caught on Zeos' channel. I'll also create a link for that as well. It has crazy hi-hat acrobatics. It showcases amazing imaging. But you don't get nearly the same level of impact from the drums and the brass instruments that the headphones provide. I'll stress here again that the heads kind of are more of a polite sounding headphone, meaning that when the volume naturally rises in a song, you're less likely to kind of turn down the volume and monitor it with your fingers. It makes the listening experience more pleasurable in that sense. The mid-forward presentation of the heads helps out here. For the song Violin Concerto Opus 35, there's a loud orchestra hit at 1 minute 46 seconds, and I didn't feel the need to touch the volume knob with the headphones, but with the other two I did. And I know I mentioned acoustic music before, but in my opinion the HD800S hands down beats both headphones in this genre. The soundstage is just right. The gleaming clarity is that cherry on top that just enhances the overall intimacy with this genre. So good for you, Sennheiser. I put the heads back on and the sound seemed almost compressed. You listen for a while and you kind of get used to it like you do with everything else, but you switch back to the Sennheisers again and you instantly notice the better separation. So they are very different in this regard when it comes to just like intimacy and soundstage and like soundstage width. Simply put, for timbre, the heads win out by a large margin. But for detail retrieval and soundstage, if you value those things, then the HD800S takes the cake. So let's talk tube amps. My buddy Alex, he mentioned a review he read where the author absolutely raved about how good these sound on tubes. So I fired up the WA22, then my air conditioner, selected Qutest in Roon, realized it wasn't connected to the amp, went to fix the cables, got a second-degree burn on my arm from touching a power tube, and then finally queued up some smooth jazz, baby. In short, yes, they sound great on tubes. The delicate yet precise way that heads handle mids, it serves it well being fed by some warm tube sound. I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but let me explain it further. So the mids, as well defined and as accurate as they are, they're never really outdone in your face. They're never really overdone, which I really appreciate. I never feel you have to turn down the volume when the song gets into it. Again, it's a big, huge advantage of the headphones here. The song Don't Know Why by Norah Jones sounds amazing with the headphones and tubes. It gives spectacular focus to Norah's vocals while still giving a spatial sense of the instruments surrounding her, all with that nice tube warmth. I put the arias on and it sounds cleaner at first with more separation. But again, you get that distant feeling with Norah's voice a bit further out. And this was my experience with most other tracks. The heads do well on tubes, better than the aria, but not as good as a pairing compared to the HD800S on the Woo Audio WA22. Personally, I still prefer the romance that the Aeolas gives on the tubes or the Sennheiser, but for a non-dynamic headphone, you can still get the precision and still very much enjoy the warmth with these newfangled AMT drivers. So let's discuss EQing. These are new drivers, so I wanted to look in what I could do EQ-wise to kind of tune their sound to my liking. And there are folks in the audio community who use measuring equipment and alter EQ settings to have the headphone measure better than stock form. The idea here is to get them to sound as neutral as possible and tone down any sort of extreme coloration that you'll hear. I personally have been using Roon lately, but you can use other EQ software such as Peace APO, and I'll probably make a separate how-to video on how to set this up and get it up and running. As for the headphones here, it looks like only user Oratori he has settings available. So I downloaded his, and it definitely did make a difference. Mids weren't so forward and things did sound a bit more clear. It actually sounded more like the Aria. Personally though, I missed the natural sound signature of the heads in stock form. So I fooled with a manual EQ in addition to oratory settings. And I sort of got it to be the best of both worlds with the clear sound via oratory, and I returned some of the mids that I was missing before. In the end, you'll have to play around with these settings yourself because listening to music is just a highly personal experience. You may absolutely love listening to something that measures spectacularly. You may also want to roll your own EQ like me, or you just may want to do away with EQ altogether. The choice is yours. So let's discuss comfort now. And this is where the head falls behind the competition here. I realize the drivers are a new technology in the headphone space, but it still doesn't escape the reality that it's one of the heaviest headphones you can buy right now. But not all is lost. So when I first put the headphones on, I initially felt like they were even more unwieldy than the LCD X's I reviewed not too long ago, which says a ton, figuratively speaking. But the longer I had them on, the less I noticed them. It is kind of weird. This is the very opposite experience that I had with the LCD X's. With the Audizies, at first I was like, not too bad. But as time went on, I started to get pains in my neck. Not so much for the heads. It's like the longer you wear them, the less you notice them. How, Germany? How? And in the other video, I also mentioned how the Audizies clamping force with glasses gave me a headache due to the end of my glasses rims just digging into the back of my head. The great news here is that I'm not getting that at all with the heads. Not sure why or how, but with glasses, I do prefer the headphones much more than the LCD X's. So if you have the opportunity to try these on, just give it some time at first. See how it feels after the second or third song. It's definitely not Aria or Sennheiser level comfort, but you may be surprised like I was. So, are the heads a better sounding headphone than the Aria or the Sennheiser? I would say it just depends what you want to get out of a headphone. I think most audio nuts will absolutely love its timbre and tonal qualities in all its natural glory here. They'll also love how pure and accurate the treble is. The Aria, however, produces such a fun and lively sound that I can see many leaning towards as well. It feels more visceral, just more alive. From an audio purist point of view, when we're talking about pure sound quality, I'd have to give the win here to the headphone. It's simply more tonally balanced and produces more of a refined sound. It's like the Aria's bigger and slightly more successful brother. The Aria is a really fun headphone that loves to party and can absolutely deliver when being fed appropriately. But if the Aria is like Daniel Craig, then the headphone here is like Roger Moore. It's more sophisticated, more suave. It can handle any situation with utmost smoothness. And the head has not only challenged the Aria in the sub $2,000 price range, it surpasses it, in my view, again when you're talking solely about sound purity. Where the Arias edge out the heads in soundstage bass response, treble sparkle, and overall impact, it is outshined in timbre and balanced mid and upper mid frequencies, and overall bettered in natural and less fatiguing presentation given by the head. But should you get it? To many, the weight and lack of comfort for longer listening sessions will just kill the experience for some people. It is a tough decision, but comfort is a big sticking point when it comes to headphones. If head can make these 400 grams or less, like the Aria here, and kind of reduce the clamping force, it would be less of a competition. But if a friend or family member asked me which headphones to get, I'd say the Aria is the safer choice. If you love the Aria but find the mids to be lacking, you really need to audition the heads, as they'll probably be right up your alley. In the end, I realized this is Head Audio's very first headphone, and they took a big chance on a new driver in this space. So for what they're able to accomplish on their first go is really amazing. You would think this would easily be in the $3,000 to $4,000 price range. So overall, I'd say the headphone is a more natural and intimate sounding Aria. And as far as the HD800S is concerned, it's in a class of its own when you're talking detail retrieval and soundstage. If you're going to pick just one of these headphones, I would personally lean more towards the Aria or Head over the Sennheiser. As much as I love the HT series, I just find the other two to be more balanced overall. Just don't forget about the HD800s when you're looking to expand your collection, or you're a classical or jazz geek and you happen to love tubes. All right, let's talk about what we have on deck. So I've been talking about this for a while on my social media channels, but I wanted to do a DAC shootout, and I know it's a lot to talk about, but I wanted to talk about the different style of DACs. So this one on the bottom, it's a Gungnir from SCHIIT, because I can't say that because then Google will get upset, just like they did with the Linus Tech Tips. But that one uses multi-bit technology, kind of similar to this one. This one's an R2R ladder DAC from Denafrips. It's the Aries 2. It's very popular. Hard to get a hold of right now because there's a wait. This is the also ever popular RME ADI2 DAC and uses AKM chips. And this one, it's also these two up top are Delta Sigmas. This one's also a Delta Sigma, but it's like a Delta Sigma on steroids. It doesn't use an off-the-shelf chip. It uses an FPGA, Field Programmable Gate Array. So it's supposed to be really fancy. Initial thoughts are it does live up to the hype. It's really nice. I'll go into it further in detail and kind of compare and contrast and tell you what I like and dislike about each one of these. But that's it for MidFi Guy today. I keep switching camera angles because my little studio's in my bedroom, so it's just a pain in the butt to move around. So this is where I am now. But we're moving soon, so we'll get a bigger space and a new studio set up, so that's exciting. But this is MidFi Guy signing out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.